Hi, my name is Roger Burrows, and I'd like to present a supplement to my 2020 Bridges paper, Labyrinths, Mysteries and Methods. There's little that survives that shows us how ancient spirals and labyrinths were actually created, so we're left with a puzzle. How could they have been constructed? In the paper I present 5 possible methods: Nazca line, keys, grids, switch tiles and path tiles. The first method was inspired by the spirals etched into the Nazca Desert in southern Peru. It is possible that a single person could have created this roughly 300-foot diameter Nazca line spiral using a rope with attached evenly spaced rings and a pole and a stick. This hypothetical method starts by creating a straight line, maybe an east-west shadow line formed by an equinox sunset. The pole is placed on the shadow line and concentric semicircles are drawn with the stick through each ring. The pole is then moved one ring space down the shadow line and another set of semicircles are drawn to create the spiral. This is a visualization of the same thing, starting with a shadow line to create a spiral. Starting with a 3-4-5 triangle to create right angles to the shadow line, this is a visualization of the same approach, but in this case to create a labyrinth. This just shows a few variations of the same method. Extending the method, a range of spirals, labyrinths and winding pathways can be drawn, of which many have turn sequences corresponding to those of ancient labyrinths. The second method, known as the key method, is fairly well known, where path turns and directions are controlled by an arrangement of lines and dots. Many ancient labyrinths can be generated by sequentially connecting endpoints of lines with dots. Here we see first a key for the Cretan labyrinth, second the Chakravyuha winding path labyrinth, which was used as a battle formation possibly 3,000 years ago, third the classical labyrinth rendered as a Hopi basket design, fourth a labyrinth on the Russian Bolshoi Zayetsky Island, possibly 2,500 years old, and fifth the Osgalimol labyrinth petroglyph in western India that might be as old as 9,000 years. The key that forms the Cretan labyrinth consists of 2 crossed lines, 4 cup lines and 4 dots. There are a number of ways that the 13th century Chartres Cathedral labyrinth could have been created. There may have been constraints imposed as well on the number of concentric circles and path directions to correspond with chant lengths, as well as with symbolism. Such constraints might well have determined the turn points and the key method used to lay out the labyrinth. Here we see a few variations of the key method. The third method is that of using the pathways of grids. A number of 4,000-year-old Babylonian clay tablets have labyrinths carved upon them. There is evidence of the use of a ruler and a rough correspondence with the square grid, also rough symmetrical alignments. Ancient Roman labyrinths are clearly based on grids and tessellating tile alignments. One method appears to start with the turn sequence of the Cretan labyrinth positioned in one quadrant. The quadrant is then repeated 3 times and rotated. The entrance path is created by squeezing the first quadrant by 1 unit. Here we see the same ancient Roman method with a rotated quadrant and a squeezed first quadrant to create the entrance path. we can extend the concept of using grids by treating their intersections as turn points, where grid units are counts of distance and grid lines serve to give direction. I first came across the fourth method in a Bridges paper of 2013 titled Following in the Footsteps of Daedalus. The concept is quite clever and easily developed further. The core idea of the concept is shown here with switch tiles rotating on parallel lines to create the turn points. Any set of parallel lines will serve with matching switch tiles to create turn points. Here, the switch method is applied to the parallel lines of a spiral. Here the switch method is applied to concentric octagons with a different type of switch tile to create a number of turn sequences, the first of which is the Labyrinth of the 700-year-old Amiens Cathedral in France. The fifth method is that of path tiles. Any tessellating tiles can be subdivided into matching tessellating grids and shapes, such that when combined the tiles form meandering pathways. Some combinations form single pathways with multiple turns, that is, labyrinths. Path tiles lend themselves readily to mosaic and game applications. Here are a few more variations of path tiles. In conclusion, hopefully, this summary of possible labyrinth design methods might inspire new ways of constructing labyrinths and new ways of having fun with games of visual logic.